This is the Unlock Your Inner Creator series, and I'm your host, Noilyn Mendoza. My intention with this series is to spark conversations with passionate changemakers and creatives that bravely dared to dream of new ways and took massive action. Despite the chaos that's happening around us, a radical and liberated future, a new earth can be realized and is possible if we choose to take brave steps. So I invite you to explore with me what that could look like. Welcome everyone to the 6th interview of the Unlock Your Creator series. I'm here with Jewél Fraser, a good friend and co-facilitator, and I wanted to officially kick off this particular interview to say that we are in Gemini season. So for that, I call in the energy of the celestial twins. Coincidentally, Don and I both have twin brothers. So here we go. So twin season. The energy of these twins are playful and intellectually curious. They're excellent at guiding change and transformation. They're always down to try something new. These curious twins are also terrific pioneers, using their energy to spearhead innovative projects. This series is really about sparking conversations with passionate changemakers and creatives that bravely dared to dream of new ways and took massive action. You know, in the last year, I think about this quote by Maxine Hong Kingston quite a bit. And it goes, "In a time of destruction, create something." We have been in the midst of a long stretch of the unknown, and that unknown and this uncertainty is what we have been taught and programmed to fear. My invitation to you is to not look at it from a place of fear, but a place of possibility, because there's infinite possibilities of creation when we don't know. And that is because we are powerful and creative beings that can and we have birthed new ways of being that honor the dignity, wholeness of each person, living thing in our planet. That despite the chaos that's happening around us, a radical and liberated future, a new earth, can be realized and is possible. So with that, I want to explore how that can look like. So I'm super, super excited to have Jewél Fraser here. So Jewél is a storyteller, a public speaker, and a nationally acclaimed communications coach based out of San Jose, California. She's the creator and host of the Barbershop Stories, which features storytellers performing true tales in barbershops and salons around New York City, and she's the founder and CEO of Fraser's Edge, LLC, which offers programs for businesses, nonprofits, and college students the opportunity to develop their leadership potential through storytelling. So her past clients have included companies like Spotify, Vox Media, and Google, as well as one-on-one celebrities, including the rapper Common. Who's jealous? Jewél currently serves as the lead instructor with The Moth and was featured among some of the nation's top changemakers at TED NYC. She also loves being a twin and a Trinidadian. So Jewél, welcome, my sister. How are you?
Hey, everything that you just said, twinning, right? We're twinning it today.
We're twinning it today. Double time.
Yep. Doing great. How are you?
I'm doing good. So Jewél, you have an amazing, amazing background, but is there anything else that you wanted to share with us?
Wow, from the background, I think that one of the most interesting things I've been asked in the past couple of days is how I've pivoted so frequently and recently. And I don't know if I had ever really thought about that question before.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm glad to kind of share with you as we continue this conversation, the things that have pivoted, the things that have worked, the things that have not worked.
Mm.
And just that ability to continue iterating and continue changing, right?
Yeah.
They say the only thing constant is change.
Change.
So
Right.
yeah.
So let's go there.
Let's do it.
Let's have this as a first question. So you are literally a change maker. As you said, you're constantly pivoting, you're shifting. And you know what? This last year, if you weren't that before, you were forced to do it, no matter what, right? But all of us were put in the situation because of the pandemic to really sit back and think about a lot of things. And we had a shift. But I think you had an advantage because this is something that you've been doing for several years. So what advice do you have for folks, whether it's to make a big life transition, a professional transition, usually in pursuit of this passion that they have or an audacious goal? What advice would you give to someone that's on the fence about transitions and pivoting? What has helped you?
What has helped me pivot during transitions? I think the thing that has most helped me pivot is understanding that there is something that I don't yet know that can be a lot better if I just lean into what feels right.
Mm.
And I think that a lot of times when we think about pivoting, we hold ourselves back because we don't know what is on the other side. And instead, one of the things I think that I do well is I kind of get excited by the potential of what's on the other side. And I think that part of that, to be honest, is just a slight shift of mindset
Mm.
of thinking about change and thinking about pivoting, not in terms of this means that I'm giving up everything that I'm already comfortable with, but this actually means that I'm actually trying to figure out if there's something else that might feel better in my soul and my spirit while I'm doing it that I haven't even tapped into yet. When you hear like a lot of people say like I really feel like I found myself, or that I'm starting to know myself a little bit better.
Mm.
I think it's those moments when we start to say to ourselves like, I really like this. I really like this work, or I really like this feeling. I have never felt this sense of like of love or of giving before, and I want to explore that a little bit more.
Mm.
And to be okay with the awkwardness with being a newbie in
Mm.
that spiritual walk, or in that walk to create something new, and being okay with it.
Yeah, you said something right there. It's to be okay, like to be a beginner. I think there's
Yeah.
so much emphasis in our society, like you have to be an expert. Like you gotta know everything. And like you said, it's a slight mindset shift, it's a slight reframe that all of us start off in the beginning somehow. And not to see that from like a place of deficit, but it just is, right? All of us start somewhere and it's just, doing it and doing it more and doing it again and getting comfortable.
Yeah, and I think like kind of going through that mindset stuff that you were just talking about, I think that a lot of us feel the need to be experts, and not enough of us feel the need to be curious, and
Mm.
to like like okay, like I know a lot about this topic, but I don't know a lot about this other angle to it, or this other iteration, or this nuance part of it.
Yeah.
So let me be a beginner again, learn this other part of it, and yeah, I think that's a big part of feeling okay with pivoting.
Yeah, being curious. I love that because I always tell my coaching clients, like, we're going to be going through a journey together, and there's might be some stuff that comes up that you were probably not aware of. So instead of from a place of judgment, let's come from it from a place of curiosity, because I feel like the weight is a little bit lighter when you're like, I'm just being curious. I'm
Right,
just learning, like there's no pressure
right.
with that. So what are you curious about right now, Don? What's piquing your interest these days?
What's it's so funny because I feel like for the longest time I've opened like the core of my essence has been storytelling,
Yeah.
right? So be that storytelling for advocacy and the way that we can advocate for social causes, or storytelling for personal development, for dating and to get out in the world and to share a little bit about ourselves. And one of the things that I'm curious about now is this new kind of realm of audio creators. So kind of similar to podcasters, but people who are actually using sound and audio to create community, to like do the same type of things, like advocate. So like real time communication, almost as if a cross between live radio
Mm.
and journalism, if you will, because there's a lot of things that are happening within this new audio space. So I'm not so sure if you've heard of like Clubhouse, for example. Yeah, so Clubhouse is like, for those people who might not know, it's a drop-in audio only app. So there's no in inbuilt feature to text somebody. There's no inbuilt feature to take an Instagram picture and, put a filter. So instead of like using an image like on Instagram, or instead of using text or text-based messages like you might see on Facebook, it's an opportunity for you to just speak. And I've really been fascinated at the opportunity for like a brand, for example, to sponsor a conversation about race dynamics in Tulsa, or for a nonprofit to come in and to say like, this is how we want to support AAPI Heritage Month, by like speaking to different people from different communities and having it happen in real time, right? So I think that for me, I've always been a fan of the audio format of storytelling. So the thing that I'm learning now is how to best facilitate those kind of conversations in real time as the technology is changing and as the technology is starting to incorporate more ways to use our voice to connect with people from around the world.
Yeah, that's incredible. And it really, I feel like, kind of burgeoned in the last few months just because of the situation that we're all in. So many conversations like the ones that we're having on the daily. Like you just see it, and it's been so fascinating because you get to hear, you hear people and also experience people in a different way when it's in these conversations. Like you said,
Exactly.
real time.
Like this kind of conversation that we can have clearly like over like Zoom or over a live
Hmm.
stream, So I think that those ways of using the technology to like live stream or connect in real time, or speak in real time, is really a fascinating way to like have people be part of the conversation, to join in, if you will.
Yeah, yeah. So, if we could just back up a little bit, Don, because I just realized, like, you and I have been co-facilitating various things, for a few years now, and I know that you actually weren't always a storyteller. So I'm super curious if you could talk a little bit about how you started doing this work, because that's not your background. So talk to us a little bit about how you did do that transition and how you're doing this amazing work now, just elevating people to share their own narratives.
It's so funny, Noi, because I think that I've been doing some iteration of storytelling my entire life, and I didn't even realize it.
Mm-hmm.
So I first started realizing this trend about this fascination with stories in college, because I decided to sit on the admissions committee. I went to UCLA, and I wanted to see more people of color in higher education. And so I remember sitting on the admissions committee and looking at these applications, like these applicants, like some of them are great and some of them just suck. Like the stories that they're sharing are horrible. They don't do a good job of like
Mm-hmm.
highlighting their life. And so I started my first business, my first entrepreneurial venture was called Envision Admissions. So it was a consulting agency where I worked with people to tell better stories on their applications, or just put together a better application in general, if you will, right? Um, Later on down the line, I went to policy school, and when I was studying for my master's, one of the main classes that really caught my attention was on community organizing, and it was taught by Professor Marshall Gans. I'll never forget this, who actually did a lot of work with migrant workers here in California, and the farm workers, specifically around like Latino farm workers, Cesar Chavez, and that whole workers movement. And it was during that time that Obama was running for president. It was right before he was about to run for president. And so Marshall Gans started looking at the strategies of the farm workers in terms of grassroots organizing and applying that to, at the time, Senator Obama's campaign. And the whole strategy was called public narrative. So how do we share the stories, like your story, my story, as it related to a bigger picture? Um, and so he started coining this term of public narrative. And I was like, oh, so what I've been interested in wasn't necessarily just policy. It wasn't just social justice or just community organizing. It was actually the way that people are using their stories to advocate for, like, selecting a candidate,
Mm-hmm.
um, or for a certain cause, or to get into, higher education, or to just entertain. And so I had to like go back in history to figure out like this is where it started. It all started from really wanting to see more diverse voices in higher education. And now it's a matter of seeing that by working with people to tell a story, it could be used for a TED talk. It could be used to advocate to Congress. It could be used to get on a stage. Um, but that is definitely kind of like the through line when I looked back at history, my own history, my personal history of how I got into this as a storyteller.
Yeah, and also thank you for that, right? So like your educational background was one thing, but you made me think about in so many communities, but particularly communities of color. Storytelling is just kind of part of the fabric of our cultures.
100%.
Like we are always just telling stories, right? Like and also just oral histories. Like that's how things were passed down, you know?
100%.
Yeah,
Right.
and so it's to me in some ways it's just a continuation of what we all inherently do. Yeah.
Exactly. And for me, my family comes from Trinidad and Tobago. And so much of what I learned about my own heritage, being first generation, was from the stories that they would share. Uh, and so I realized that we were always kind of consuming stories. I just didn't know that that's what we were doing, right?
Yeah.
As part of like passing on that family lineage, that family legacy of how we even came to this country, why we came to this country, um, the history of our names, of our people.
Mhm.
It's all connected to storytelling.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Speaking of family stories, one of my favorite stories that you all can find this actually. We'll put the link in. It's on the internet, but the turkey story. So Don, I don't want to give it away. I don't want to steal your thunder, but give us a little snippet of this turkey story that was a turkey that traveled.
A turkey that traveled. Whew, if there are any immigrants that are like watching this, you probably have felt the need to carry food back home for certain occasions. That true cultural, authentic food. In my case, this was Trinidadian food. In Before the turkey, it was Trinidadian food from New York to California. And then finally, going home for Christmas, it was bringing a turkey from the United States to Trinidad and Tobago. I won't give away what happens to me or the turkey as I try and partake in foul play, if you will. But
Double meaning,
but
double everything today.
twinning, we're still twinning, right?
Winning.
But yes, my family had requested all kinds of foods to be taken across all kinds of different borders, international and domestic borders, for the sake of having a true Caribbean Christmas.
Love it. So folks, look out for this story. It's hilarious. It's heartwarming. It's about family. It's all that good stuff. So speaking about stories, you have worked with a tremendous amount of groups, like so diverse over the years. I am really curious. What projects have you been involved in, or what storytelling, trainings have been the most memorable to you? Like, which ones do you constantly think about as you do this work?
Whew, that is a great question. I'm going to start with one that's domestic because the one that I think caught me most off guard over the past 8-ish to 10-ish years, I lost track after two, um, is probably working with the Innocence Network.
Mm.
So they work on behalf of people who have been wrongfully convicted of crimes that they did not commit. And um, and going into it, I kind of assumed that these people would be like really kind of jaded. I really assumed that, that they've been wronged. They literally have served 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 years plus for crime that they did not commit. And when I went in there, I was blown away at how many stories were about forgiveness,
Mm.
um, how many stories were about the freedom that they now have and like looking forward to creating the life that they want to just maximize the time that they have in the free world. And to be honest with you, Noilyn, I was like not I was expecting a lot of trauma, a lot of pissed off stories, and there were those stories as well, but not nearly to the extent that I saw. There was people who were really happy about those who supported them, those who that they met on the inside, about people who did actually transform. So I would say the Innocence Project, an Innocence Network, is definitely one that has always been really kind of close to my heart over the past couple of years in terms of storytelling. And also, very quick random side note, a little bit of a plug. I'm in a Netflix documentary right now called Trial 4. I'm at the very last episode introducing Sean Ellis as a free man for the first time to the world. And it was a beautiful moment in between me doing what I love to do, which is storytelling, and the advocacy in terms of introducing this free man to the world. And there was press there and there was cameras there, and I forgot that they were recording it for a documentary. So it just came out. Oh, it came out a while ago on Netflix called Trial 4. So that one always it comes to mind for me. Internationally, I am it's a little bit of a mixed bag in between some work that I did in both South Africa and in India. In India, there was a group that was trying to get out the word about tuberculosis, like TB, and how it's very much preventable, like people can take care of it, but it's rampant in certain parts of India. And so there was a huge campaign that we were trying to do to kind of get out the word about that in that area, as well as women who had been sexually violated and devastated in South Africa. And their stories of everything from being married off at a young age, to women like sex slaves, really kind of devastating stories. But then realizing that these were the people who were that were pushing the needle forward in like local communities, and also in terms of international attention, so that people can kind of get behind their causes. So yeah, depending on if it was international, domestic, I just have no idea what anybody's story ever is. And it's a blessing to be able to hold space for them. And to know that once they know how to tell the story well, that they're just going to keep on going further with their work, with their lessons, with their advocacy. So those are the couple that kind of come to mind immediately.
Yeah, and you know what? I have had the privilege to witness you in action, to see how that happens in somebody. We have worked, I think, together probably at this point about 60 folks who were part of this leadership program. And to me, it's like, even if it happens over and over again, I'm always just so surprised to see somebody. Usually it's folks that they're the quiet ones in the room. They're the thinkers, you might call them introverts, but it's like the people who they pause a little bit, and there is incredible magic that happens when they find their voice and they get up to that mic. It's like a different person.
Yeah.
You're totally, completely transformed. And I don't even think it's just for that moment or that public story share. I literally see it, like they are transformed after that experience afterwards, and it just shows up in so many different ways in their life. It's incredible. And you said another thing about how you are somebody who holds these containers and these spaces for transformation. And as a fellow facilitator that also holds a similar role, people call on us to create these experiences so that the participants can have these moments of transformation. But what I think a lot of facilitators won't tell you is that we are also completely transformed too as a result of these experiences. And there is so much wisdom that happens just to be in the space of with other people, and there's like this group energy that is so beautiful. So what would you say have been the biggest things that you learned about yourself in this process of being a storytelling coach and holding space for transformation for people?
Damn, we're going deep with this.
Of course, that's me. Right?
Mm, what have I learned about myself?
Or what
I,
surprised you in these experiences of, working with groups?
yeah, whew, that's a great question. I'm going to answer this in two ways because the first way that I think about this question is my own process of becoming a storyteller.
Mm.
So, in order to first coach people, I was called out to actually share my own stories. I was like, no, I'm here to coach your stories. I'm here to listen. I'm not here to tell my story. And, and the kids that I was working with at the time were like, no, 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 miss, that's not going to work. Um, so I had to go through the process of sharing my own stories. And when I did, I realized that I had a tendency to lean into stories that I felt were going to be like light or comical or, you know, non-abrasive in a way, if you will, um, which were fun. It was a lot of fun. But then when I started to share more stories that were a little bit more personal, like for example, about my twin brother, um, and he has special needs, and so sometimes there's not always a funny angle to those stories. It's more so like, oh, I learned from this particular story that I was kind of a jerk when it came to understanding what it meant to be an equal, or when it comes to sportsmanship. So I think one of the first things I realized about myself was that I didn't have to do funny stories, or I didn't have to do a certain type of story to be real, to be authentic, to be vulnerable, right? So that was the first thing that kind of came up to me in terms of what I learned about myself, is that I could do both, and that I didn't have to speak a certain way in order to get across a message or to put on a mask in order to feel like I'm comfortable speaking and telling you the story. So that's the one thing. And then as it relates to coaching and actually working with others, the thing that I learned about myself is that I, and I think that a lot of people see somebody or even read something about somebody and kind of automatically assume that they know that person's story.
Mm.
And I constantly have to remind myself, even though, and we all do it, we see somebody, we make an immediate like snap judgment about what we think about that person's class or that person's status, or how intelligent they might be or not. Um, and I have started to learn consistently to just shut up, listen to the person, to remind myself that we often are asked questions just so that we can listen quickly and then respond back again. And that's not what I want to do as a coach. I just want to be able to ask a question and authentically just like leave the floor open and then ask follow-up questions if there's something that's not making sense. But I've learned to I feel like I'm constantly learning about life because I'm constantly hearing people's stories.
Mm.
And so because of that, I think that the other thing that I've learned about myself is to continue to learn through experiences. I guess the only catch, which has been really tricky this past year, is when the stories that you're being shared is a lie, or when the story that you've been shared is a fabrication. So that's something that I've been trying to navigate recently, because my inclination when I hear somebody's story is to take it on face value, um, and at the same time, especially like nowadays, like even recently, hearing stories that was coming out of the Middle East, right? One narrative about a tragedy could be the same narrative told from a different lens of success or of victory. So I've had to kind of check myself to make sure that the story that's being shared is A, truthful, it's B, it's not putting down another group of people and other individuals based off this narrative, and that the other voices, the other characters, if you will, in the story are not being they're not being put down in a way that makes the storyteller seem like they are the one, they are the answer, but instead hopefully they're curious, they're trying to figure some things out. Those are the kinds of stories that I'm now trying to support more, as opposed to like these expert stories where this is what happened, this is the truth, because every truth has a lens. a perspective, and that perspective changes as we grow and as we change. So those are some of the things that I'm working on right now as a storytelling coach.
Yeah, yeah, you remind me of a few things. It's this idea of there's many layers of truth, especially when you see a story. Like there's many angles, there's many perspectives, and not necessarily saying that one is right or wrong, but they're just different ways to look at it. And so, I admire you for being able to kind of navigate. It's tricky, right? Because on one end, you want people to trust themselves and to be open enough to share. And then on the other end, it's also negotiating. But when you share a story, like with anything, you are in relation to something else and someone else.
Right.
And so where do you put yourself, in that? And also this idea, because, you obviously value, like, we want to value the dignity of all people. So it's a lot, right? But I think it comes back to your first thing about what you learned. And I truly believe this, right? For transformation to occur, to be a really good facilitator, to be a really good coach, you have to be willing to go as far as you're trying to take your client,
Right.
right? These participants. Because if you're not willing to go there, like you said, if you're not willing to go there and share your own story, how do you expect them to do that too? So I think that's part of that as well. Like to
Exactly.
be a really good storyteller, it's like you got to also be able to do the work. And we're watching literally transformation happening in real time for folks that are going through this process.
It's like coaching,
Yeah.
like coaches, in order to understand how to do it well, we need coaches to help us and to,
Yeah.
and so it's, I'm always amazed at how many times people will want to um, do something and haven't actually done it for themselves or haven't gone through that process themselves.
Mm,
Um, so yeah, it's definitely one of those things I think is critical.
it's so critical. It's so critical. I want to know the little like the magic behind the curtain because like I said, you you have like this superpower. You can get the most timid, shy person, reserved person that's like doesn't want to share anything, and the next thing I know, they're up there on the stage, and it's incredible. What do you tell people so that they can be in a space? What I really see is like to be seen in their wholeness, to feel safe that
Yeah.
I'm worthy to share this part of myself. And I'm okay to be seen up there. Not from like I'm naked and I'm vulnerable, like from I like a disempowered way, but it's like I'm holding these truths about myself and I'm owning it and I want you to see me.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, it's funny because whenever I have a group, it's usually, for the most part, it's usually not the introverts who speak first, right? It's usually somebody who feels a little bit comfortable about what their story might be or what they might want to say. And what I've noticed for a lot of people who are introverts is that they'll kind of like sit back, they'll observe what's going on. And it's during those times when I'm setting it up that I start to kind of get deeper with whoever is sharing a story, you know. So for example, if we were in a group and you started off with a story about, I don't know, your dog, something kind of like kind of a casual story.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I would try to go a little bit more deeper with you, and kind of talk to you. So tell me about the emotions. Tell me about the emotion that you felt when you first got the dog, or when you felt that something was problematic or in trouble, right? And I think that what happens is for a lot of introverts, they start to see like, huh, this is kind of like going into like a deeper space, right? And little by little, the things that pop up for anybody listening is not just about the things that are like in our head, but things that are in our heart.
Mm.
And as we start to go a little bit more into other people, other places, you can kind of see it in people's eyes, as well as just their presence when they are ready to say something. And it's always the people who are the introverts who surprise me the most with some of the deepest, most thoughtful commentary. And I think it works, Noilyn, because they know that they're not going to be cut off. They know that I'm just going to sit here and listen, and the group is going to do the exact same thing until they feel like they're complete. They know that I'm probably going to go even like deeper with them, and that they're okay with that because sometimes they haven't spoken these things out loud to other people. And then once it's out in the world, the snowball starts to kick in, right? Other people are like, wow, I'm so in awe of what you shared. I'm so grateful. I'm so thankful. And then that gives other people permission to also start going deep, right? So I think when it comes to the scouting process of figuring out what those stories are, it's very, a little, to pull back the curtain a bit, it's very strategic in terms of who I'm, like, how much time I'm yielding to any one person and the kind of questions that I'm asking them. And then when it comes to actually getting on the microphone, that's all them. Once they've started sharing this story with other people that they feel comfortable with, that they feel like, oh my God, people are actually going to listen to me, they just get on a microphone and I sit back and watch and marvel at the amazingness of it all. Yeah.
It's incredible. It's so incredible just to, like I said, to be witnessing that process. Because I've worked with you from like the ideation of a story to working through it and then seeing the completion. And then sometimes even after the public story share, seeing then how it's then used for more than just one purpose. It's so beautiful. And like you said, it's like, oh, to give this person who feels like they don't have opportunities to just say their piece and no one interrupts them. No one tries to paraphrase them. You just literally let them speak. And that's why I just think like your work as a storytelling coach, but a storytelling coach who really has this vision and this mission to elevate stories that we're not hearing. And like we just see it now, like how it is super, super critical because narratives are being written about communities, like you said, that are falsehoods, right? That we don't control the narrative. And this is in some ways like taking that power back and saying, no, I'm not going to allow you to do the story because that's not the whole truth of what's going on. I get to speak from this place because this is my experience and this is my own community. And I think the other thing that you mentioned too, which I have seen over and over again, is like, you gotta drop it 12 inches, folks. Like when you're there and you're working through stuff, like we usually operate from here, but like we should really be speaking from here because that's how we connect with people.
Right. But we're not taught that.
Yeah.
We're taught to lead with our head.
We are taught to lead with our head, right?
Yeah.
And it gets us into trouble sometimes. Like we gotta think with our heads. We gotta be strategic about, certain
Oh,
things.
we gotta balance that.
Yeah.
We gotta balance that.
We gotta balance it. We often don't allow this piece. And I just always think about like when we have these folks go up there and they share stories, I was like, oh, we actually don't know the magnitude of how we're impacting this audience that's hearing this story. You just never know if there is someone in that audience that needs to hear your story, whether if it's just like to affirm something, to feel like they're not alone, or maybe to like spur them into action. Like, oh my gosh, I'm so motivated or I'm so angry that I now need to do something.
Yeah. 100%. And it's always incredible to see when people who typically lead with their head start to lead with their heart, and how they start to like look, they start to look different, they start to feel different, they start to communicate differently, and so it's always beautiful, like months later, to get like emails, to get cards. I have a couple of cards over here from different organizations and people that I've worked with who are just like, and these are like months down the line, where people are like, I have now started to share this story with my colleagues or with my friends or my loved ones. Um, or I started creating like storytelling opportunities for my employees because I realized during the time of COVID that people were so disconnected, and they just they don't want to have to talk about work. They want a space where they can actually just talk about their stories and so it's been amazing to see how transformative these techniques can be.
Yeah. So Dawn, I'm sure that people are curious. They're like, I want to work with this woman. So how can the listeners connect with you?
Best way would be via my website, dawnjfraser.com, DAWNJFRASER, like the show, .com. And it's as we were talking about like pivoting and reiterating, this past year I've been doing a lot more work with people who either want to become paid public speakers, because a lot of people want to be able to like just have 1 gig a month that adds an additional line item to their budget, or to become full-time public speakers, as well as those who want to be able to either speak on the stages of TEDx, or the Moth. So those are some new programs that I started like right prior to the pandemic, but and then of course working a lot with corporations and nonprofits, those organizations that want to be able to inspire through their stories or advocate for change, or even just innovate and build bonds amongst employees. So many ways for us to continue working together, B2B, business to business, or business to consumer. I got your back.
Contact Dawn. Incredible. So last question for you.
Yes.
What does being a creator mean to you?
Being a creator means to me, creating, it means actually using our time, using our energy to create something that is going to live beyond us. Whenever I work with somebody, for example, on a speech, and especially if it's something that's going to be high profile, we have to recognize and realize that taking the time now to create this presentation or to create this story is going to live online forever. Children after us, grandchildren, other people who are just like inspired by our work or who wanted to know what we cared about will know as a creator that at some point in time, you decided to lean into creating this talk or this program or this nonprofit because you saw the need or you saw the desire for it to exist. And so for me, being a creator is knowing and honoring the time that you are spending to leave a lasting legacy. Be that through your words, through your ideas, your presentations, your nonprofits, your corporations, whatever. It is about knowing that when I leave, this is what I've created, and this is how I plan to have my little tiny mark on the world.
Wow, that's so beautiful. To think of it from a place of legacy, and also to just honor, like, this is a snippet in time of who I was. So beautiful. So, this, I always do card pulls when we do our training. So we're going to do a card pull for you. We're going to do an I am card pull. So again, hand, and you just tell me when to stop. This will be our last thought.
All right, here we go. Yep, right there.
Right there? What am I
touching? Yes.
Okay. I am safe. So what does this card say? I am safe. I trust my intuition to lead me down the right path. Looking back on my trials, I see that I am still here and thriving. I always end up better, stronger, and wiser. I have proven to myself that I will always make it time and time again. I am safe.
Yes.
Keep on thriving,
I am
people.
safe.
You're safe.
I am safe. I am alive.
Oh my goodness. Dawn, I love it. I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for being here, for inspiring us to tell our stories, create our own narratives, and to just show up. show up in our wholeness. So I appreciate you so much. And folks, please get in touch with Dawn. She is an amazing, amazing coach, amazing trainer. If you want to be able to bring more stories about yourself, about your organization, about your communities, please be in touch with her. We're going to be continuing these series, so we'll hope that you tune in some more. And otherwise, have a great day, and we'll see you soon. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this conversation and you'd like to help support this interview series, make sure to tune in to the next episode and share it with others. To catch all the latest from me, you can follow me on Instagram at The Radiant You, U as in the letter U, and sign up for my newsletter by visiting www.theradiantu.com. Again, that's theradiantletteru.com. Thanks, everyone, and remember, dream big, dream bold, and take brave steps. I'll see you next time.